If you think starting a laundry detergent business is as simple as mixing a formula, pouring it into a bottle, and listing it online, you might be walking straight into one of the most expensive mistakes new entrepreneurs make. On the surface, this business looks almost perfect. Everyone does laundry. Families buy detergent over and over again. The market is massive. And compared to opening a restaurant, a gym, or a retail store, launching a detergent brand seems surprisingly accessible. That's exactly why so many people are attracted to it. But when we visited Mark Reynolds, founder of Clean Wave Detergent Company, he told us something that completely changed the way we look at this industry. According to Mark, most new detergent brands don't struggle because they make a bad product. They struggle because they misunderstand the business they're actually entering. Today, Clean Wave ships thousands of bottles every month and serves customers across multiple states. But Mark says that before anyone spends $1 on ingredients, packaging, or inventory, there are a few realities they need to understand first. Because this is not just a manufacturing business. It's not just a marketing business. And it's definitely not a business where a great product automatically wins. Over the years, Mark has watched entrepreneurs spend thousands of dollars creating formulas, designing labels, ordering packaging, and building websites, only to discover that getting customers is harder than expected, shipping costs are higher than expected, and cash gets trapped in inventory much faster than expected. The result is that many people run out of momentum long before they run out of ambition. And that raises a very important question. If laundry detergent is such a huge industry with millions of loyal customers buying every single month, why do so many new brands struggle to gain traction? To answer that, we need to start by looking at the opportunity itself, because the same thing that makes this business attractive is also the first trap waiting for new entrepreneurs. What makes this opportunity so attractive is also what makes it so deceptive. Unlike trendy products that come and go, laundry detergent solves a problem that never disappears. Every apartment, every home, every hotel, every laundromat, and every cleaning company needs it. That creates something business owners love to hear: recurring demand. Customers do not buy detergent once. They buy it again and again for years. From the outside, that sounds like a dream business. Mark understood that long before he launched Clean Wave. Years ago, while working in consumer goods distribution, he noticed that the products generating the most consistent orders were rarely the flashy ones. Instead, they were everyday essentials that people quietly reordered without much thought. Laundry detergent was one of them. The logic seemed simple. If customers are already spending money every month, why not create a brand and capture a small piece of that market? The more Mark researched, the more attractive the opportunity appeared. Private label manufacturers existed. Packaging suppliers were easy to find. Online marketplaces made selling products easier than ever. Social media allowed brands to reach customers directly. Compared to building a factory from scratch, entering the market looked surprisingly achievable. But that perception creates the first major trap. Many new entrepreneurs mistake a large market for an easy market. Those are not the same thing. A large market attracts competition. And competition attracts businesses with bigger budgets, stronger distribution networks, and years of customer trust. Mark explains that customers rarely wake up excited to switch detergent brands. Most people already have something sitting in their laundry room that they trust. Convincing them to try something new requires more than a nice label or a fresh scent. It requires a reason. A meaningful difference. A clear value proposition. And most importantly, a system capable of reaching those customers consistently. That realization changed how Mark viewed the entire business. He stopped thinking about detergent as a product and started thinking about it as a customer acquisition challenge. Because no matter how effective the formula might be, it does not generate revenue sitting inside a warehouse. The product only matters after someone decides to buy it. And that leads to the next question every aspiring entrepreneur needs to answer before entering this industry. How much money does it actually take to get a product into customers' hands before the first dollar of profit ever shows up? One of the biggest surprises Mark encountered was discovering how different the startup costs looked on paper compared to reality. Before launching Clean Wave, he believed the majority of his investment would go into creating the formula itself. But once he started building the business, he realized the formula was only one piece of a much larger financial puzzle. Most people imagine they need a great product and a website. What they do not see are the dozens of expenses that appear before the first customer ever places an order. The process starts with product development. Even if you work with an experienced chemist or a contract manufacturer, creating a formula often requires multiple rounds of testing. Every adjustment costs time and money. Then comes packaging. Bottles, caps, labels, boxes, and shipping materials all have minimum order quantities. Suppliers rarely want to sell a few hundred units. They want larger production runs that justify their manufacturing setup. That means entrepreneurs often have to buy inventory long before they know whether customers will actually purchase the product. Then there are compliance requirements, product testing, insurance, storage, freight costs, branding, photography, and website development. Individually, none of these expenses seem overwhelming. Combined, they create a much larger number than most first-time founders expect. Mark remembers one of the most frustrating lessons from his early days. Every time he thought he had budgeted for everything, another cost appeared. A packaging revision. A freight increase. A storage fee. A delayed shipment. Small expenses accumulated quickly. What made the situation even more challenging was the amount of cash tied up in inventory. Unlike digital products, physical products require money to sit on shelves waiting to be sold. Every bottle in storage represents capital that cannot be used elsewhere. If demand grows slower than expected, inventory becomes a financial burden instead of an asset. That is why Mark tells new entrepreneurs to focus less on the cost of making a bottle and more on the total cost of building a system capable of delivering that bottle to customers consistently. In many cases, the hidden costs surrounding the product become more significant than the product itself. And that realization forces every new founder to confront a critical decision. Once you understand how much capital is required, should you invest in producing the product yourself, or should you let someone else manufacture it while you focus on building the brand? After calculating the startup costs, Mark faced a decision that almost every detergent entrepreneur eventually encounters. Should he build the product himself, or should he let an established manufacturer handle production while he focused on growing the brand? At first glance, producing everything in-house seems like the obvious choice. You control the formula. You control quality. You control the production schedule. And in theory, you keep more profit on every bottle sold. But as Mark dug deeper into the numbers, he realized that control comes with a price. Manufacturing requires equipment, dedicated space, quality control systems, trained labor, safety procedures, inventory management, and constant operational oversight. Every production run creates opportunities for mistakes. A packaging issue, a mixing inconsistency, or a supply delay can affect thousands of units at once. For a new business, those risks can be difficult to absorb. That is why many entrepreneurs choose contract manufacturing instead. Under this model, an existing manufacturer produces the detergent while the entrepreneur focuses on branding, marketing, and sales. The advantage is speed. Instead of spending months building production capabilities, a founder can enter the market much faster. The manufacturer already has equipment, sourcing relationships, and production expertise. But this path creates a different set of challenges. Most manufacturers require minimum order quantities. They are not interested in producing 50 bottles at a time. They want production runs large enough to justify their operations. That means entrepreneurs often commit significant capital before they have fully validated demand. Mark remembers evaluating both paths and realizing that neither option was perfect. One required more operational complexity. The other required more trust and more upfront inventory commitments. Ultimately, he chose a hybrid approach that allowed CleanWave to scale without carrying the full burden of manufacturing from day one. Looking back, he believes many entrepreneurs obsess over production when they should be obsessing over customers. The reality is that customers rarely care who manufactured the product. They care whether it solves their problem, delivers consistent results, and arrives when expected. That insight changed Mark's priorities completely. Instead of asking how cheaply he could produce detergent, he started asking how profitably he could sell it. Because manufacturing decisions only matter if the numbers work. And once Mark began breaking down the economics behind every bottle, he discovered something that surprises almost everyone entering this industry. The product may look profitable on paper, but the real margins tell a very different story. When most people calculate profit, they stop far too early. They look at the manufacturing cost of a bottle, compare it to the retail price, and assume the difference is profit. Mark made that mistake during his early planning stages as well. On paper, the numbers looked fantastic. A bottle that cost a few dollars to produce could potentially sell for several times that amount. The opportunity appeared incredibly attractive. But once CleanWave started fulfilling real orders, a very different picture emerged. The first expense was packaging. Then came freight from suppliers. Then warehousing. Then shipping materials. Then payment processing fees. Then customer acquisition costs. Every step removed a little more profit from each sale. One of the biggest surprises was shipping. Laundry detergent is heavy. Unlike lightweight products that can be shipped inexpensively, every additional pound affects fulfillment costs. A bottle might look profitable leaving the warehouse, but by the time it reaches the customer's doorstep, a significant portion of the margin may already be gone. Mark explains that many entrepreneurs underestimate how quickly logistics expenses can compound. Then there is marketing. Whether a company uses social media advertising, search engine marketing, influencer partnerships, or affiliate programs, acquiring customers costs money. In some cases, the first order may barely break even. Occasionally, it may even lose money. That sounds alarming until you understand how successful consumer brands actually operate. The goal is often not to maximize profit on the first purchase. The goal is to acquire a customer who returns again and again. That is where the economics begin to change. If a customer purchases detergent every month for several years, the value of that relationship becomes much larger than the profit from a single transaction. This is why Mark stopped measuring success one order at a time. Instead, he focused on customer lifetime value. He wanted to know how much revenue a customer generated over months and years, not just on day one. That shift in thinking transformed the way CleanWave made decisions. Suddenly, retention became more important than short-term profit. Customer experience became more important than squeezing every penny out of a single sale. But understanding the economics was only half the challenge. Even a profitable product means very little if customers never discover it. And that led Mark to what he now considers the most important lesson in the entire business. The companies that win are rarely the ones with the best detergent. They are usually the ones with the strongest distribution. The more time Mark spent in the industry, the more convinced he became that this business is not won inside a laboratory or a manufacturing facility. It is won through distribution. In fact, he believes distribution is the single biggest reason some brands grow rapidly while others disappear despite having similar products. Early on, CleanWave experimented with several sales channels. The most obvious option was direct-to-consumer sales through an online store. It gave Mark complete control over pricing, branding, and customer relationships. The challenge was traffic. Building a website is easy. Getting thousands of potential customers to visit it consistently is much harder. Every visitor costs money, whether through advertising, content creation, or partnerships. That reality forced Mark to explore additional channels. One option was local retail. Small independent stores were often more willing to test new products than large national chains. The advantage was immediate exposure to customers already shopping for household goods. The disadvantage was lower margins and slower growth. Another opportunity came from commercial clients. Laundromats, cleaning companies, vacation rental operators, and small hospitality businesses all purchased detergent regularly. Unlike individual consumers, these customers often bought in larger quantities and reordered predictably. Mark discovered that a single business account could generate the same revenue as dozens of individual customers. More importantly, commercial clients tended to make purchasing decisions based on performance and reliability rather than brand recognition alone. That created an opening for smaller companies to compete. Over time, CleanWave developed relationships across multiple channels instead of depending on just one. Mark compares it to building a table. A business supported by one sales channel stands on a single leg. If that channel weakens, the entire company becomes unstable. But when revenue comes from several different sources, the business becomes much more resilient. Looking back, he believes many entrepreneurs spend too much time perfecting products and not enough time building distribution systems. Customers cannot buy what they never see. And even the best product in the world cannot generate revenue sitting on a shelf. Yet securing the first sale is only part of the equation. The companies that become truly valuable figure out how to turn one purchase into many purchases. That is where the economics become dramatically more powerful. Because once Mark understood how to acquire customers, his attention shifted toward an even more important question. How do you convince those customers to come back month after month instead of buying from someone else the next time they need detergent? Once CleanWave established reliable distribution, Mark discovered that the most valuable customer was not the one who bought a bottle today. It was the customer who bought another bottle 30 days later, and then another 30 days after that. That realization completely changed the company's strategy. In the beginning, like many entrepreneurs, Mark focused heavily on acquiring new customers. Every sale felt like progress. But over time he noticed a pattern. The businesses generating the strongest profits were not necessarily attracting the most new buyers. They were keeping existing buyers longer. Laundry detergent has one major advantage that many industries do not have. People eventually run out. Unlike a piece of furniture or a household appliance that might last years, detergent gets used every week. That creates an opportunity to build recurring revenue if customers are satisfied enough to return. Mark started looking closely at why some customers reordered while others disappeared after their first purchase. Product performance mattered, but it was not the only factor. Convenience played a major role. Customers wanted a simple buying experience. They wanted reliable delivery. They wanted confidence that the product would perform consistently every time. To encourage repeat purchases, CleanWave introduced bundled packages designed for different household sizes. They also tested subscription options that automatically delivered detergent on a regular schedule. For many customers, eliminating the need to remember another shopping task was a valuable benefit. Mark also learned that communication mattered. Follow-up emails, reorder reminders, and customer support all contributed to retention. A customer who felt connected to the brand was far more likely to return than a customer who simply completed a transaction. Over time, repeat purchases began generating a larger percentage of revenue. That created a powerful financial advantage. The company no longer had to spend as much money finding a brand new customer for every sale. Existing customers were generating additional revenue on their own. Looking back, Mark believes this is where many new entrepreneurs misunderstand the business. They focus on making the first sale and ignore what happens afterward. But in reality, long-term profitability often depends on what happens after the customer receives the product. Yet as recurring revenue grew, a new challenge emerged. The more orders CleanWave generated, the more pressure the business placed on inventory, cash flow, operations, and forecasting. And those problems become impossible to ignore once a company starts scaling. As CleanWave continued growing, Mark encountered a challenge that rarely appears in entrepreneurial success stories. Growth itself started creating problems. During the early stages, every additional order felt like a victory. More customers meant more revenue. More revenue meant more opportunities. But as volume increased, Mark realized that scaling a physical product business requires a completely different set of skills than launching one. The first issue was inventory. If CleanWave carried too little stock, products could sell out and disappoint customers. If the company carried too much stock, cash became trapped in warehouses. Finding the right balance was far more difficult than it appeared. Demand rarely moved in a perfectly predictable pattern. A successful marketing campaign could create a surge in orders. A seasonal slowdown could leave inventory sitting much longer than expected. Then there were supplier lead times. Packaging components, raw materials, and production schedules all had to be coordinated months in advance. A delay from one supplier could affect the entire chain. Mark learned that forecasting became just as important as selling. Another challenge was cash flow. Many entrepreneurs assume revenue and cash are the same thing. Mark quickly learned they are not. A company can generate strong sales and still experience cash pressure if inventory purchases, production costs, and operating expenses grow faster than incoming payments. In some cases, success actually increased financial stress because larger orders required larger investments before revenue was collected. Operations became more complex as well. More customers meant more support requests. More shipments created more opportunities for damaged packages, delivery delays, and fulfillment errors. Systems that worked perfectly for a small business often broke under higher volume. Looking back, Mark believes that many entrepreneurs prepare for launching but fail to prepare for growth. They focus on creating a product and finding customers, but they spend very little time thinking about what happens when demand finally arrives. For CleanWave, scaling required better forecasting, stronger supplier relationships, more disciplined inventory management, and constant attention to cash flow. Those behind-the-scenes systems became just as important as marketing and sales. And after experiencing every stage of the journey, from researching the opportunity to navigating the realities of growth, Mark developed a very clear perspective on the question most aspiring entrepreneurs ultimately want answered. Is this actually a business worth pursuing for someone starting today? After everything Mark Reynolds learned building CleanWave, his answer is surprisingly simple. Yes, this can be an excellent business. But not for the reasons most people think. Many entrepreneurs enter the industry believing they are building a product company. Mark believes they are actually building a distribution company, a customer retention company, and a cash flow management company that happens to sell detergent. That distinction changes everything. Looking back, the biggest lesson was understanding that product quality alone is rarely enough. A great formula may get a customer interested, but systems are what create long-term success. Distribution systems generate sales. Retention systems create repeat purchases. Operational systems allow the business to scale. Without those foundations, even strong products struggle to reach their potential. When asked what he would do differently if he started over today, Mark says he would spend less time obsessing over the product and more time validating demand. Instead of ordering large amounts of inventory early, he would focus on finding customers first and proving that people were willing to buy repeatedly. He would also build relationships with potential distribution partners much sooner. That approach would have reduced risk and preserved valuable capital during the early stages. For beginners considering this path, Mark recommends starting smaller than most people expect. Rather than trying to compete with massive national brands immediately, he suggests identifying a specific niche, a local market, or a commercial customer segment where a smaller company can provide unique value. The goal is not to win the entire market. The goal is to establish a profitable foothold and expand from there. Most importantly, he encourages entrepreneurs to pay close attention to cash flow. Revenue can look impressive on paper while cash becomes trapped in inventory, production schedules, and operating expenses. Understanding that reality early can prevent many costly mistakes later. In the end, Mark believes the entrepreneurs who succeed are not necessarily the ones with the most innovative products. They are the ones who build repeatable systems around customer acquisition, customer retention, inventory management, and distribution. Because the real opportunity is not selling one bottle. The real opportunity is creating a business where customers continue buying for years, supported by systems that can grow long after the founder is no longer involved in every decision.